you can purposely take the effect of the breath on various parts of the body. You can breathe in different patterns also. So today, I would suggest you breathe in some patterns that I suggest. One is you breathe in a triangular fashion, where the base of the triangle is up here, and you breathe as though the breath is going into a narrow apex at the bottom of the lungs. Inhale along those lines, exhale along those lines, which is in addition to all other aspects of pranayama that you have done. The general aspect that on inhalation, the skin from the back appears to move forward. On exhalation, that skin doesn't fall back. Only the ribs relax into it. All that aspect continues. What are fundamental aspects of pranayama practice continue. But in addition to that, create a line of action of the breath of this triangle in your body today to start with. My friend, Mr. Iyengar's son, Prashant, first taught me this. It was very good. I was very happy to learn. Breathe into a triangle. When the breath comes to your extreme parts of the clavicle area, expand that base of the triangle, if you will. Make it as wide as you can. The fact that I am asking you to make it narrow in the bottom, don't worry about that. It is made narrow so that you can pay much more attention to the very wide base at the top of the triangle. See that at least towards the end of inhalation, the clavicle area is very wide indeed. And before you exhale, if you are retaining inhalation retention, on inhalation retention, you make that as wide as you can. Before you exhale, try not to lose that width. To hold that height, inner height, what I would call, is easier if you pay attention to this wide base of the triangle, the width that is never lost. At the end of every inhalation, increase that width even further. Watch me. When I inhale, I am working along that line of the triangles. When I come to the top of the clavicle area, I keep that as wide as possible. On exhalation, the exhalation line moves this way, but the width in the clavicle area is not lost. The second breath I take in, I make it even wider. And so on with breath after breath after breath. After you're done that for 3 or 4 breaths, this is what I want you to do next is I inhale, hold the inhalation retention, keep that width. Without losing that width, I exhale. At the end of the exhalation, I hold exhalation retention, where this tends to collapse. Don't let it collapse on exhalation retention. I have told you in past, many of you, that don't try to practice exhalation retention until you have considerably good control on inhalation retention. Now I'm asking you, do exhalation retention, provided this width at the top is not lost. Okay. If it is lost, you are not quite ready for exhalation retention. Okay. There's no danger, you can still practice it, but that is the indication that you can hold. I've seen my teacher, actually I've touched his shoulders on inhalation. On exhalation, if I touch the sides of the shoulders like that, there is no collapse inwards. Amazing width is held in exhalation. Fingers were kept on the floor like that. Can you see my fingers? And the way the tip of each finger presses the floor gives me an indication of what is it I should try to control, which finger I should press more, so that my shoulders would behave well on exhalation retention. So as I inhale, I watch the pressure of my tips of the fingers. And Mr. Iyengar was very good. The slightest disturbance of the finger on my finger, he would catch. Hey, Ramanand, you're losing it on your pinky finger or on your index finger. And he was right. Keeping the pressure on the finger, not to press very hard, just a sense of contact. The inner lift of the chest that I talk about, that should remain on exhalation. Also, when today I'm talking about the width, both will remain by proper pressure on the fingers. It will help. Pressure on the finger is not necessary, but it's a good way to begin learning. Three more minutes. You might notice, some of you might notice that your exhalation becomes longer. Okay, so the real part to learn by doing this kind of practice is when I do Nadi Shodhana Pranayama, suppose I'm using my left hand, okay? What happens in Nadi Shodhana is slowly this arm, my left arm that I'm using, begins to collapse onto my chest. And particularly the upper arm restricts the movement of my chest. So when I do my pranayama practice, I imagine that I have four arms, like some of these Indian gods. The two arms are using this physical action of pranayama. Other two imaginary arms are still with the fingers pushing the floor, which helps me to keep that width and stops the arm from collapsing onto my chest. You understand what I'm describing? As I hold my hands like this, the elbow doesn't collapse into my chest. It remains a little farther away. And in the process, if I imagine energy going from my shoulders, from the head of the humerus to the floor, it helps me to keep that lift and width of the upper chest. So the triangle I talked about, that triangle never collapses in. Nadi Shodhana, we have a few minutes. Begin, if you like, with the left hand. I'll ask you to change to the right hand after some time. In the beginning, you have to imagine that you have four arms. Later, that imagination is not necessary. Once the head of the humerus behaves itself, then that imagination is not necessary. Not only the elbow of the hand that you are using does not collapse onto your chest, but deep inside the head of the humerus, that collapse doesn't come. And when you bring the head straight, then there is more tendency of that arm to collapse on the chest. So bring the center of the head, but don't bring the elbow. Actually, elbow is brought in, but not collapsing on the chest. The width remains around the head of the humerus. If you don't remember everything else, just try remembering how you can keep the two heads of the humerus as wide out as possible, particularly during exhalation retention.